In the spring of 1223, on the windswept steppes beside the quiet Kalka River in what is now eastern Ukraine, 80,000 Mongol horsemen under the legendary generals Subutai and Jebe achieved something that still baffles historians. They utterly crushed a combined army of Russian princes and Kipchak Turkic warriors, perhaps the finest heavy cavalry Europe and the steppe could muster, then simply turned around and rode away. Not a single major battle was lost. No fortress was besieged, no kingdom was annexed. After one of the most devastating victories in medieval history, the Mongols vanished into the east as mysteriously as they had appeared, leaving behind a trail of charred villages, shattered lances, and a question that has echoed for 8 centuries. Why did they leave? To understand this phantom campaign, we must step back to the world before the storm. By 1220, Genghis Khan had already forged the largest contiguous land empire the world had ever seen. From the Pacific to the Caspian, tribes and kingdoms bowed or burned. Yet the great Khan's gaze kept drifting westward toward unknown lands rich with grass for horses and gold for tribute. In 1221, while Genghis himself crushed the Khwarezmian Empire in Central Asia, he detached his 2 most trusted lieutenants, Subutai, the stoic strategist known as the Valiant, and Jebe, the Arrow, a former enemy who had earned his life by his skill with 20,000 elite Tumans, roughly 40,000 riders, and a special mission. Circle north around the Caspian Sea. Scout the lands of the Kipchaks and the Russian principalities, punish any who resisted, and return with intelligence. What began as a reconnaissance in force would become a 5,000-mile odyssey of conquest that terrified Europe. The Mongols moved like a hurricane, crossing the Caucasus in winter. An achievement that stunned local kings, they smashed through the Christian kingdoms of Georgia and the Alan tribes. Then they turned north into the endless sea of grass where the Kipchak Turks, also known as the Cumans, ruled as masters of the horsebow. The Kipchaks were no strangers to war. Their light cavalry had raided Byzantium and Hungary for generations. But they had never faced the disciplined fury of the Mongol Tumen. Using classic steppe diplomacy, divide and intimidate, Subutai first convinced several Kipchak clans to join him with promises of shared plunder. When the main Kipchak Khan, Khotan, refused, the Mongols struck with lightning speed at night, scattered his forces, and sent Khotan fleeing westward to the Russian lands, begging for sanctuary. That flight would prove fatal for Eastern Europe. The Russian princes of Kiev, Chernigov, Galicia, and a dozen smaller realms were a fractious lot, divided by blood feuds and rival claims. Yet the arrival of Khotan and his desperate warnings of Tatars who fought like demons briefly united them. In early 1223, an alliance of perhaps 80,000 warriors, Russian knights in heavy mail and kite shields, Kipchak horse archers, and princely druzhina gathered near the Dnieper River under the nominal command of the 3 senior Mstislavs: Mstislav the Bold of Galicia, Mstislav of Chernigov, and Mstislav Romanovich the Old of Kiev. For 9 days, the Russo-Kipchak army pursued the Mongols eastward, believing the invaders were retreating. In reality, Subutai and Jebe were executing one of the greatest feigned retreats in military history, drawing the enemy deep into the open steppe where Mongol composite bows and mobility reigned supreme. On May 31, 1223, the trap snapped shut beside the Kalka River. The Russo-Kipchak vanguard, led by the impetuous Mstislav the Bold, charged across the river without waiting for the main body, straight into a storm of arrows. What followed was not a battle, it was annihilation. Mongol arrows, shot from composite bows with a pull strength of over 100 pounds, could punch through Russian chainmail at 200 paces. Wave after wave of heavy Kipchak and Russian cavalry were shredded before they could close. Mstislav the Bold's Galician knights, the pride of the alliance, were surrounded and hacked to pieces on the riverbank. Seeing the disaster, Mstislav of Chernigov and the Kipchak Khan Khotan fled with what remained of their men, abandoning the main army to its fate. The elderly Mstislav of Kiev arrived too late, encamping on a rocky hill across the river with his druzhina. For 3 days, Subutai besieged the position with captured Russian prisoners driven forward as human shields. On the 4th day, the Mongols offered honorable surrender through a Christian intermediary, the plundering brood leader Ploskinia. Trusting the oath, Mstislav and his princes laid down their arms. The Mongols kept their promise in the letter but not the spirit. The noble prisoners were bound, laid beneath wooden planks, and slowly crushed to death while Subutai and Jebe feasted atop the makeshift platform. An execution method reserved for those who had spilled royal blood. Common soldiers were simply slaughtered or enslaved. Of the great allied host, perhaps 1 in 10 survived to limp home. Yet instead of pressing westward into the rich, divided principalities of Rus, Kiev lay defenseless, Hungary and Poland were oblivious. The Mongols turned east. Subutai and Jebe rode north along the Volga, crushed the Bulgar kingdom that tried to block their return, and by 1225 rejoined Genghis Khan beyond the Aral Sea, having circled almost the entire known world in 4 years without losing a single major engagement. Why did they leave? The answer lies in the mission Genghis had given them: reconnaissance, not conquest. They had mapped the western steppe, tested European heavy cavalry and found it wanting, gathered intelligence on every tribe and kingdom from the Caucasus to the Carpathians, and delivered a psychological blow that would echo for decades. When the main Mongol invasion finally came in 1237 under Batu Khan and Subutai himself, the princes of Rus would remember the terror of Kalka and still be powerless to stop it. The Phantom Raid of 1223 was never about holding land. It was a message written in blood across half a continent. The storm was coming, and nothing in its path would stand unchanged.